My father was valedictorian of his class in the optometry school of University of Pacific, which is one of the better schools on the West Coast. He was an outstanding optometrist, and he trained under an ophthalmologist, Lenny Rifkin. Oh my God, this crazy Jewish guy that was just nuts after Mexican women. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. Really crazy story, by the way. But anyway, Dad ended up creating 3 practices, and he became very wealthy. And so over time, all of his friends were dentists and stuff like Doc Bickle. Doc Bickle was the actual dentist to the Hearst family. So if you've ever been to the Hearst Castle, their dentist was my dad's best friend. Anyway, Doc owned a lot of stock. In fact, he had a big ranch and stuff. And I always thought it was because he made a lot of money as a dentist. He didn't make enough money as a dentist to buy that ranch. It was the stock market that helped him buy that ranch. And specifically, he made a very large amount of money in Pacific Gas and Electric. Anyway, my grandmother ended up marrying Doc after her husband died. Her husband was pretty rough, but Doc was wonderful to her. And what happened was she inherited some stock, and then that stock eventually came to me. So I ended up with Pacific Gas and Electric stock at an early age. And so that really introduced me to the stock market. I also noticed that all of my dad's friends who were also very wealthy, they'd all done it in the stock market, like Floyd Smith. He was a World War II bomber pilot, like the B-52 bombers. He was a dude flying the thing in the nose. Talk about ballsy. And I flew in his Bonanza V-tail one time. He said, "Hey, don't tell anybody that I'm going to do this." And he started doing rolls with a V-tail Bonanza. It was nuts in the clouds. I mean, it was so smooth. It was like silky smooth. Those World War II pilots, I mean, my God, can they fly planes? Anyway, back to what I was going to tell you. He made his fortune in the stock market. He owned a house on the river that was, above what a typical salesman could make. He was a Fuller Brush salesman, but he took his Fuller Brush sales commission money and he invested it in the, you got it, stock market. And so that made him very wealthy and very successful. Anyway, that was my very first introduction to the stock market and how powerful it really is in being able to create fortunes for families. Around August of, like in 81 or something, we got the news that my dad had throat cancer. He was acting funny, he wasn't eating and stuff, and he was losing a lot of weight. Well, by Christmas, he was dead. Not only that, it was such a psychological shock to my entire family that money stopped coming in to pay for rent for school. Tuition was already paid. My food card at the cafeteria was paid. And of course I could shower up in the gym and so forth. So it wasn't like the end of the world. It wasn't like I was living on a park bench. Like for instance, I know at one point Daniel Hall had to suffer that experience because of financial mismanagement in his family. But in this case, it wasn't really financial mismanagement that caused so many problems with what was going on in my life. It was more like just, the fickle finger of fate screwing with everything. And before I knew it, the rent wasn't paid, and because I decided, I had to focus on school and not rent. I had a pickup truck, and so I moved into my pickup truck, just like this one here, right? Can you imagine being all shoved up inside the cabin there, barely move, your neck hurts, your back's on fire? Not a problem, of course, around September, October, something like that. But when it gets too cold, you can freeze to death. And that was the problem that I faced. So then, I started bumming on people's couches and stuff and kind of couch surfing, which was even more humiliating. What that experience gave me was this intense desire to be economically independent. I tried everything. I tried real estate. Real estate was just horrible. You know why? Because I had to relate to people, At the end of the day, a really good salesman, everybody just wants money when they do a deal, and whether they sell something or whatever. But a really good salesman hides that fact. The thing is that I'm more of a finance guy, so it's much more difficult for me to hide those kinds of facts. So, with real estate, I was very successful. I did make good money at it, but it drove me crazy because I had to deal with tenants. People problem. I had to cut contracts. Sometimes people didn't do what they said they were going to do in the contracts. And I tried everything. I mean, I tried everything you can imagine out there, every single possible way to make money, whether it was multi-level marketing, whether it was, buying tax liens, whatever it was, I tried it. And over time, I discovered there was only one thing that worked for me, and that's this. I basically opened up retirement accounts, like for instance, Roth IRAs, 401ks, and I started to notice that my stock investments far outpaced any other kind of investment I had, whether it was real estate or whatever the heck it was. Stocks are what made me money. And so my first stock investment was in Caterpillar, and Caterpillar made my first double-digit returns. It was up in the 70s or 80s in 1 year. And that really opened my eyes because, I was taking finance courses on my way to getting my PhD at the University of South Carolina. And in the process, I got the most prestigious degree in international business and finance in the world at Thunderbird. So I was well aware of how these markets worked. I was being taught how they worked and so forth. And that really gave me an edge when it came to the stock market. And so over time, I started to notice that my big gains were coming from the stock market. Like for instance, the largest one-day gain I've ever had in the stock market is $186,000, over $186,000. That's just amazing. I never believed if someone would have told me that you could make that much money in the stock market. I don't know that honestly I would actually have believed them. But it's true. You can make that much money in the stock market because I have. I'm not saying that you can necessarily. I mean, you're going to have your own results when you invest in the stock market because I'm not going to be there to, press the buttons for you. You're going to have to make your own decisions and buy your own investments. And then those investments are going to turn out the way they turn out. Just like if you were standing in front of a roulette table. I can't guarantee that the number you're going to put the chip on is going to hit. You're going to have to learn how to analyze the market and how to look at the market the way I look at the market if you want to be successful. Because the way I look at the market is based on decades of training in the best universities in the world, in the United States, in finance and in investments. And that information that I am very, very willing to impart to you is exactly what you're going to get from these videos. Well, I eventually got out of my truck and I eventually graduated from Indiana University. And then I ended up couch floating a little bit with my brother. And I met a group of Brazilians and I found out that I could speak Portuguese and learned it and ended up living in Brazil and spending a lot of time in Brazil. And that encouraged me to look into international business, specifically international business. And so in order to get into Thunderbird, I had to go take the basic courses, finance and everything. And I did it at Humboldt State University because I'm still a California resident. And that gave me an edge in terms of tuitions. So I ended up finishing all these courses at Humboldt, and I decided that the best courses, the courses that helped me understand business the most were finance by far. I mean, counting was critical, but finance would take you to the other level. You have to know accounting to know finance, basically. It's kind of like the basic root language, the grunts. That's how accountants talk. And then in finance, we start using actual legible words, right, to explain how business works. That's basically the difference. But anyway, I finished at Thunderbird with the most prestigious degree in finance. And then I ended up finishing my degree at Thunderbird, the most prestigious in international business, and I met a guy named Jay. Okay, Jay was a trip. He was a wild dude. He was super wealthy. He had basically owned this large communication company, cable communication company, and I knew him because he was a Rotarian, and I came and talked about my experience as a GSE exchange member in between Northern California and Sao Paulo, Brazil, which was an amazing experience. But anyway, Jay, he really kind of got me focused in how you could become successful in basically focusing on what matters, on what really matters in life. The sun angle is kind of weird, so I'm going to just keep talking to you here in this section and finish it out. But the main thing is that Jay introduced me to a book called Think and Grow Rich. Now, Think and Grow Rich was a book that was supposedly commissioned by Andrew Carnegie. We don't really know to what degree Napoleon Hill actually had contact with Andrew Carnegie, but nonetheless, his book really does lay out how to take a idea, a concept that you believe is important, becomes your definite major purpose, and how to keep working and stay focused on working towards finishing that goal. That is how people become successful in life. The Secret, which is a book that you may be aware of, is basically garbage. It doesn't do anything for getting you towards your wealth goals. Now, The Secret may do other things. I don't know what. I don't think it does anything. But it's Think and Grow Rich that can really take you the distance and help you become a millionaire by applying the concepts in Think and Grow Rich. And so what I did was decided that I wanted to become a millionaire. That became my definite major purpose. And I focused my entire life on that goal by applying Think and Grow Rich. So when I finished my degree at Thunderbird, I moved to Reno because my mom was having some difficulties psychologically. And by the way, I learned that there's certain kinds of difficulties where it's just better to let the family member just stew it out and hit bottom and then come in and help. Otherwise, you can end up getting drugged to the bottom of the ocean, like when people try and save each other and they actually don't know how to swim, you know what I mean? And they end up croaking. That's right, they end up croaking. So anyway, I didn't understand that at the time. And I ended up teaching business classes at a community college in Reno, Nevada. And I met a Puerto Rican guy, and he said, hey, my mom's got this place. Go rent a place down there in Puerto Rico. And so I moved to Puerto Rico and started a distribution company, and then ended up teaching adjunct courses at the University of Puerto Rico. And so here comes the dean one day, and he says, Scott, we'll pay for your PhD if you just go do it. I said, okay, I'll go do it in finance. And they're like, oh my God, it's a really hard degree. Hardly anybody can finish it. I guess go for it. So I went for it and actually finished it. Unbelievable. Yay! And that's how I ended up becoming a finance professor at the University of Puerto Rico. But an important factoid is that while I was actually being an adjunct professor before I went and did my PhD, I started a successful produce distribution company. And that really taught me the ins and outs of business. My family had invested a lot in real estate. That's what Dad did with his optometry earnings. He'd go buy real estate. And so when I was doing my PhD, my wife could not accompany me. So I was starting to drink too much. I was going through like a half a gallon or even a gallon of wine a day. No probs. So I started running ads. I'll buy your house if you're going to lose to the bank. And I run other ads. If you need a house, I got a house for you. So I ended up acquiring I had 70 houses at my peak in this little business I created. While I was doing my PhD in finance, we'd hide the fact from all the finance professors so they wouldn't get jealous. And I ended up whittling that thing down to about 20 properties, the key properties. And I learned a massive amount by owning so many properties and managing them all by myself. That's right, all by myself. And that is tenants. Tenants are a total nightmare. I know there's guys out there that are trying to blow smoke up your skirt that real estate's a passive investment. Real estate is probably the least passive investment I know. You basically have to rent stuff to people who don't care about you, who don't care about your family, who don't care about your goals, your wealth goals, who would absolutely care less about how you're going to succeed, and all they want to do is sit in your property, and they'll trash it. I mean, there's some guys that'll come in and rebuild a freaking motorcycle in their damn in the living room, right? And just trash out the living room, and then you come in and you're like 10 grand out of pocket. So I was very good at getting large, I would basically lease option, and that was a somewhat successful model. But what I did with the money over time was I set up these Roth IRA accounts, okay? Roth IRAs, and then over time, since I had an LLC and I eventually created a Nevada LLC, I was able to create what are known as individual 401ks and individual Roth IRAs for both me and my wife. Now that is the powerhouse. When I look back on my life and I go, wow, what really, really made a lot of money in the market, it was those investment accounts, because I can self-direct them. I can invest them in any kind of stock I want. I can invest them in indexes and ETFs and call options. I can invest them in whatever I want. And the thing is that I started to notice that I could take 10, 15, 20 grand and turn it into 100 and 120,000 grand. That is an extremely difficult feat to pull off in the real estate market. It's almost impossible, in fact. Now, like I say, most people that go through that real estate investment path, I don't want to do it again. I mean, I thought, well, maybe I'll be back to renting houses once I return to Puerto Rico. See, Puerto Rico's got Spanish civil code laws, so you can't, do real estate deals down here like you can in the United States, because they don't walk on 2 feet. Let's put it that way. They've got this weird, funky system that's retarded as heck, and it really messes up the real estate market down here in Puerto Rico. Ask my wife; she'll tell you. I mean, we just really dislike the way that the government is set up and the way the laws are set up and the way the politicians control things in Puerto Rico. And so Puerto Rico is not a place to invest. It's a place to live. Why? Because, well, in February, I have just absolutely amazing weather that people don't have, for instance, in the United States, because it's too cold and nasty and rainy. Well, I'm actually living it up and enjoying myself. And, by the way, let me show you something. See that? That ain't. Let's talk about what that ain't. What that ain't is that ain't a tennis shoe. That ain't a shoe. That's a sandal. So it's like a friend of mine, Lanterney, says, you know what? You're the only guy I know that's actually pulled it off. You become a multimillionaire in the stock market, and you walk around all the time in shorts and flip-flops. I'm normally in a t-shirt, and actually when I'm trading, I'm normally in my underwear, right? But not all day. I mean, right now I'm not in my underwear. I mean, Lan says I'm in my underwear all day. That's not true. There are times that I'm not in my underwear. But the main thing is the stock market is the only thing that allows me to do this, because the stocks don't care. I don't have to dress nicely for stocks. I don't have to say nice things to stocks. I don't have to be polite to stocks. I don't have to be kind to stocks. And that's what's really great about the stock market. No matter what my mood is, I can do my work in the stock market, and I know that if I do things right, I'm going to get paid. Whereas in the real estate market, all I know is that every single person I deal with is a potential legal threat. So it's a big difference between the two markets. Anyway, the corruption in Puerto Rico is like 10, 15, 25, 50 times more than the most corrupt place in the United States you could possibly find. I mean, these people do not know how to run their island. And so they've completely run it into a depression. The bonds are completely collapsed and everything. And I haven't had a raise at the university for 10 years. The place is totally trashed out. And all I'm going to say is, thank God for the stock market, right? Because if I had to rely on my salary here at the university, if I had to rely on anything on the island of Puerto Rico, I'd be financially dead. Because these people have killed themselves. All their politicians have stolen the money, and they keep voting for the same politicians because they just don't learn their lesson. So the stock market is something that's really saved my butt. Now the thing is that I started to notice that if I would focus on some key factors, momentum and volume. So for instance, last year I made $1 million in about 3 months in the stock market. Now you can't do, I don't know. I mean, you just really can't do that with a small amount of capital. I took $250,000 and turned it into $1 million in about 3 months. I don't know of any way to take $250,000 and turn it into $3 million in real estate, unless you're I don't know. I guess maybe you're Joe Biden's son or something. Maybe you can do it, right? But other than that, I don't know any other way. Or Hillary Clinton's son or Trump's son. If you're one of these top, connected politicians, then you can scrape out these deals from these agencies and stuff. But us normal people, we can't. And so the thing that I want you to understand is that the stock market is what's made me a millionaire. It's been the thing that's made me by far the most money of any kind of investment I can possibly do out there. And so over time, I've just, given up on doing real estate because it just doesn't make any sense for me to waste my time in real estate. I spend all of my focus right now on the stock market. And if you'll come back here every day, Monday through Friday, then I'm going to give you a rundown of the most important stocks that I'm actually looking at. And that's going to help you immensely because, well, I don't know. I had to go get a PhD. I had to go get trained with people from top schools like MIT and stuff like that to figure out how to make the stock market make money for me. And I had to learn an enormous amount of theory, an enormous amount of technique. And so if I had somebody back in the day when I was just starting out, that I could watch what they were doing and hear what they were thinking, that would have been enormously useful to me. So I encourage you to come back every day and watch the update videos to see what I'm looking at the market, maybe what positions I've closed or what positions I'm taking. I pretty much am completely transparent. I really don't hide anything at all. There's really no secret to making money in the stock market. There's some just very simple things, just like flying an airplane, that, a good pilot can fly with just a rudder and a stick. Well, like in this case, a good stock investor makes money on some very basic concepts, and that's what I'm going to teach you, and that's what I'm going to continue to reinforce Monday through Friday here with me in these videos. Okay, so here's the most important things you got to do to get started in stock investing. Number one, you've got to have investment accounts that are not taxable. If they're taxable, then you're going to get slaughtered. You cannot be, running money through taxable accounts that are, especially if they're making large returns. So you have to set up, number one, a Roth IRA. It's a very simple account. You can look up online how to do it. You got to set up a Roth IRA and start trading through a Roth IRA. That's the most important first step that you can take. Now, if you have a business that you can run as an LLC, then you can set up individual 401k, an individual Roth IRA, but that's a much more complicated step and might not be for you right now, but you do need to get a Roth IRA set up for you and your entire family. That's the most important step. And then number two, the second step is you have to get some savings into those accounts. Do it for you, do it for your spouse, and do it for your kids. Every single one of them when you set it up. And this is a massive first step. You'll look back and you go, wow, that was the best advice I ever got. And finally, I want to make something clear. If you're not saving, you ain't going to make it. You ain't going to become a millionaire. You have to save. You have to save a lot. So in the beginning, when we got married, these other couples were going on a lot nicer vacations and they had a lot nicer furniture. And today it's completely reversed. We're the ones with the money. So we're the ones going on the really nice vacations. We're the ones buying the really nice furniture and stuff because we're wealthy. So don't be afraid to save and reduce the fanciness, right? I mean, you don't have to go to Europe. You can get a much cheaper vacation going to Disney, right? And if you can't afford Disney, you can get a much cheaper vacation at a national park. So that's my final bit of advice in terms of how to become a millionaire in the stock market the way I have, is that if you're going to follow this path, then you're going to have to become a great saver. And if you can't become a great saver, it ain't going to work. And if you can't be disciplined enough to open up your Roth IRA and any other investment, any other retirement account that you can open, especially a self-directed one, then it won't happen either. So make sure you really focus on getting those steps done, because I've done it. I read one time in a book that supposedly the hardest thing to do is to actually believe that you can become a millionaire in the stock market. And I would agree with that now. I was like, that's crazy. I don't think that's true. But now over time, yeah, I agree with it. It's like, it's like true. How the heck, believe you can do it. Believe you can become a millionaire in the stock market. That's the first step that you have to take. Believe. And then the second step is save. And then the third step is open a Roth IRA. And then you're on your way. That's how I did it. That's how I became a millionaire in the stock market.